YouTube's taking its time. It's live, sorted, cool. Facebook is sorted. Sweet, we're rolling. If you're on Instagram, what's happening, people? Someone leave me an emoji in the comments. Just let me know that you can hear me and you can see me okay. Mega, thank you, ladies. Appreciate that. Right, cool. We'll give it a minute and then we will get going. Make sure we have got everything up. Sorted, sweet. Right. We're not messing around on this one. We're not messing around. So let's get straight into it. Let me make sure. Podcast software is good. Right. Hit record. Sweet. 3, 2, 1. Yes, gang. What is happening? Welcome back to another episode of the Type 1 Movement Podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you, we've only just opened up, and I'm going to tell you, get a pen and paper, because this is going to be one of those where I give you a lot of sort of applicable stuff to help you have better control over your blood glucose levels. I'm going to be sharing with you what I do and what I do. Basically, I've got training videos on in my course to help my clients. So before we get started in this, please leave me a rating and a review on the podcast app, as it really does help me reach more type 1 diabetics and positively impact our community. Also, whatever device or platform you're listening to this on, please screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me at type1_Tom so I can reach out and say thank you. So this, I thought I'd bang on about basal insulin, you know, your long-lasting insulin, your background insulin, your basal rate, basal profile if you're on the pump. I thought I'd bang on about it so much and the importance of it that why don't I tell you guys, give you guys like a walkthrough on how I test my own background basal insulin. I'm on a pump now, but how I tested when I was on pens and the sort of training that I've got in my program and my course on it, because I will let me dial it back and tell you that I always bang on about basal insulin, background insulin, long-lasting insulin is the mecca. It is the key, the underpinning ground, the floor, the foundations of your diabetes management. Because if you have got that wrong, everything else will go to shit. If it's too much, you're going to be having a lot of lows. If it's not enough, you're going to be getting a lot of spikes and highs. So look, I always use this analogy. It's like building a house. Let's say we're going to build a beautiful house, yeah? And we just go in and we dig a small foundation, we lay some shitty blocks down, whatever builders use to build a house. But then after that, we're building this beautiful house. Everyone can see these visuals. It's such a nice house. For me, my dream house would be like an open glass front. It's beautiful inside. But then a storm comes. And because the foundations are that shit, the house falls apart. Like, it just falls apart. And that is the same if you're in terms of your basal insulin. If that's incorrect, you could know your insulin to carb ratio. You could understand about bolusing for fats and protein and stuff, your pre-bolus timing and that. But if your basal insulin, your basal profile, is wrong, none of that matters. None of that matters. So listen, if you take one thing from this, I will tell you how to test shortly, but understand that. And I can confidently say this, a lot of type 1s that I've worked with and a lot of people that I see struggling with the levels, if they could only get their basal rate right, their control would improve massively, tenfold. So I thought I'd bang on about it that much. Why not tell you guys how I've tested my own rate? Yeah, how I've tested my own basal rate. So we're going to get straight into this. Now, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of it, but I'm also going to tell you what's applicable if you're on a pump and what's applicable if you're on pens, because they are slightly different. With a pump, you can fine-tune every single hour and tell your pump, hey, like midnight till 1 a.m., give me 1 unit of insulin. Do you know what I mean? On the next hour, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., give me this amount of insulin. Whereas on pens, you can't. You can't fine-tune that way. So I'm going to basically give you sort of a walkthrough, like I say now, and a few rules to stick to when you're testing your basal rate. Now, look, let's start dialing it back as much as we can. We want to make sure we're stable overnight. That's the main thing. We want to make sure we're staying in range, we're stable overnight. So we're getting a good night's sleep. We're waking up in range. We're ready to go about our day. Do you know what I mean? We're motivated to eat well, to work out, to go and smash your job, whatever it is. Staying in range, like getting your blood glucose level correct and in range overnight is the first point. Yeah, I don't care if you're on a pump and you can tweak it throughout the day and stuff. This is what I say to all my clients. Let's start with overnight. Why? Because we want a good night's sleep. We want a good night's sleep. So we want to make sure whether you're on, your pump or pens, multiple daily injections, whether you're on Tresiba for your long lasting, Lantus, Levemir, whatever the fuck it is, I don't care. We want to start overnight. We want to stay in range overnight. So how do we do this? How do we do this? This rule applies that I'm going to tell you now how you do it. Whether you're on a pump or you're on pens, you want to make sure your last meal is 4 hours, at least 4 hours, before you start the test. Before you start the test. Because you want no rapid acting insulin on board. Most rapid acting insulins are in and out. They've done the job within 4 hours, after 4 hours. Yeah. So you want to make sure, this is key. Don't care whether you're on pens or a pump, that you're starting the test 4 hours after your last meal. Right. So let's say we want to start our test from midnight. We want to start a test from midnight. Then we know that our last meal has to be at 10 in the evening. We can't eat after that. We can't eat after that. Yeah. 10, 11. Sorry, I'm getting my maths wrong there. We're looking at 8 in the evening. Apologies. My maths messed up already. 8 in the evening. Yeah. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There we go. Our last meal wants to be at 8. Then we know we can start testing from midnight. As long as it's 4 hours. Last meal, and then 4 hours after the last meal. Yeah, 4 hours after the last meal. That's when we start our test. That's when we start our test. So that's a basic rule to stick to. Got to be 4 hours after your last meal. And when you're on a pump and you start to test morning, lunch, like your afternoon, your evening, that's the same rule. 4 hours after your last meal. So let's have a look at what we want for a last meal. Let's have a look at what we want for a last meal, because what we don't want to be doing is having something super high in fat, say a burger and chips or something, and then we get our insulin to carb, like, right, we bolus for it. But then after 3 or 4 hours, we're trying to test, but we're getting a spike because we know fat causes that delayed spike, right? So we don't want to be eating a fucking burger and chips or a pizza or even something super high in fat like avocado, chicken salad or something like that. We don't want a high fat meal as our last meal, or a really high protein or a large meal. It's going to take a long time to digest as our last meal before we're starting an overnight basal rate test, right? Excuse me, because we don't want that delayed spike. We don't want to have to do an extended bolus or a split bolus. So we want something super, super simple. That is, and I'll give you a rough idea of macronutrients, carbs, fats, and protein in a sec. We want something super simple that we know we can bolus for. Right? So something that I had quite a lot was a sandwich or a wrap, and I recommend this to clients, yeah? So we know in a wrap, roughly, there's probably going to be the size of the wrap, 40 grams of carbs. We want a little bit of protein in there. I'd say stick around 20 grams. You don't really want more than that, because that will then start to convert to glucose and cause a slower delayed spike. And then, as I've just mentioned, we don't want a high fat meal. So we want this last meal 5 grams, ideally 5 grams or under of fat. Yeah. And then you're going to bolus for that meal. Hopefully you've got your bolus correct, and you're going to be around about in your target range. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be bang on in the middle. You could start the test as long as you're in range at the slightly higher end of your range. Yeah. But if you do drop low, I cancel the test or try again another night, because you don't want to be dropping low, correcting a low, and then trying to run a basal rate test, because once we've gone low as type 1s, we're more susceptible to lows, yeah? So you don't want to be low. But you can be a little bit on the higher end as long as you're in range. So this last meal, like I said, we want it around, I always stick to 20 to 50 grams of carbs. We want around 20 grams of protein, and we want 5 grams of fat or under, because then we know it's not going to cause a delayed spike, yeah? Like I say, make sure you've got a pen and paper, you're taking notes. There's a lot of gold in this. A lot of gold what I'm giving you guys, and feel free to pause it, come back to it, listen to it again and again. That's how you're going to get the best from it. So, right, we've figured out that our last meal needs to be at least 4 hours before we're going to run our basal rate test, whether you're on pens or a pump. Doesn't matter. We figured out what our last meal needs to be. We know it can't be a large protein meal or a big meal or a high fat meal. We want something super simple. And then we start our test. Like I say, giving the example, last meal at 8, I'm starting the test from 12. Now, a lot of us do have like Dexcoms or Libre. We can sleep right through. We can wake up, we can look in the morning, or we can scan our arm. If you've got a mile sort of thing, whatever, we can check that graph and we can see what's gone on overnight. If you're still using, because like when I was first running basal rate tests on my pens, I didn't have a CGM, a Dexcom or a Libre. I was on finger prick. So if you're using a finger prick, my best advice to you will be to set an alarm for around 3 or 4 in the morning, wake up, prick your finger, just see what your level is, and then go back to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, prick your finger again, see what your level is, because that's going to tell you what's kind of going before bed. When you go into bed, know what your level is. 3 or 4 in the morning. I say anywhere from 2, but 3 or 4 is fine, because what a lot of type 1s can get is like it's called like the like dawn phenomenon. So what happens is we get a rise in our glucose levels. I get this anywhere from 2 till 4. Yeah, so that's why I say if you're on finger pricks, you're not really going to have a finger prick. That's going to give you a reading. So you've got the one before you go to bed. You've got the one 3 or 4 in the morning. And when you wake up in the morning, you've got that one. So that's going to tell you what's going on with your levels. If you're lucky enough to have a Libre or a Dexcom, you're just going to be there. You wake up in the morning, you're going to see your graph. Yeah, you're going to see your graph. Now, let's take, a couple of outcomes from what could happen. Let's take what I've just spoke about there, dawn phenomenon. We're getting a rise. And let's say, give myself an example, my rise starts at 3. My rise starts at 3 a.m. Yeah, I'm going to give you the example on the pump first. My rise starts at 3 a.m. I get dawn phenomenon, which is genuinely what I get. So what do I need to do? I'm getting a spike. That's knocking me out of range. Okay. So I wouldn't be so hasty to go and alter things just from the first test. Get 2 nights. Get 2 lots worth of data. Yeah. This goes for overnight, throughout the day. Get 2 lots. Ideally 3 if you want to be a fucking goody two shoes, because this evens out any variables. Yeah, evens out any variables. So let's say I've run it 3 consecutive nights, and every night I'm getting a spike. I'm getting dawn phenomenon around 3 a.m., which a lot of type 1s get. I genuinely get this. So what I would then do, because I'm on a pump, is I would go, right, I'm spiking at 3 a.m. I'm going to go back 2 hours. I'm going to go back 2 hours to 1 a.m. My maths is right. I fucking nailed it. 3 take 2. Hey, look at this, gold star. Right, so I'm getting a spike 3 a.m. Go back 2 hours. And what I would then do is, I've genuinely done this, is I'd increase my basal rate for the hour from 1 a.m. to impact 3 a.m. This is key. Or if you're on a pump, this is key, because what you need to understand is that pumps of rapid-acting insulin do not take effect straight away. It would be pointless in me for saying, hey, I'm getting a rise at 3 a.m., so I'm going to go and change that hour 3 a.m., because that's not going to affect till fucking 5 a.m. It takes 2 hours to work. These are the basics. This is the basic shit of getting your basal rate right on a pump, right? So if you're getting a rise, like say me, 3 a.m., I'm going to go back to 1 a.m. I'm going to increase there. I'm getting a rise, right? That's on a pump. This is applicable, the fasting, the last meal, the adjustments 2 hours before, any time of day, whether that be overnight. Yeah, because I'm not going to go through and tell you how to test morning, because once you know how to test overnight, you can test morning, you can test afternoon, and then you can test evening. This is if you're on a pump, yeah? You can test that. The testing process is the same. It's the same, yeah? So let's say that's if we're getting a rise. What if we're getting a drop? Quite simple. I'd look when the drop was. I'd go back 2 hours, and I'd take some of my basal insulin away from there, yeah? Same, like I say, overnight, same testing principle. For in the morning, you just extend your overnight. So once you wake up, you probably fast until lunchtime. And then obviously lunchtime, you want to make sure you're having your breakfast. 4 hours after breakfast, we start testing for the afternoon. And then the same in the evening, you're having your lunch. 4 hours after that, testing in the evening. Yeah. That's on a pump. That's on a pump. Yeah. Obviously, if you stay in range overnight, it's fine. You don't need to adjust anything. Let's look at pens. Let's look at multiple daily injections, pens now. Now, I'm going to take insulin glargine, Lantus, and Tresiba, because they've got a very similar sort of couple of days for you to notice any changes with them. Then I'll cover Levemir, the three most popular ones. So let's say with Tresiba, with Lantus, our goal is to make sure that it's the right amount. It's what I did when I started on Lantus when I was first diagnosed. But our goal is, and then went on to Tresiba. I'm on a pump now because I couldn't fine tune it. It wasn't that great for me. But our goal is on these is to make sure we're going to bed in range and make sure we're waking up. Anything that happens throughout the day, you're not really going to be able to make many adjustments to, because the priority is making sure that the basal insulin, Tresiba or Lantus, is enough, that it's keeping you in range or it's not too much, and you're going to bed in range and you're waking up in range. If there's anything like lows or highs throughout the day, you'd have to deal with that with food or rapid acting, because you can't tweak by the hour with that. So that's the goal. That's what I did, and that's what I say to all my clients who are using Lantus and they're using Tresiba. Let's make sure you're going to bed in range. Still do that test. I've just told you how to test overnight. Last meal, 4 hours. We know what the meal is, and we know when we're starting our test from. So that's the goal. We're going to bed in range, and we're waking up in range. And it's sorting out that dawn phenomenon if you're getting that. Yeah, that's the goal with Lantus and Tresiba. If, let's say, you're going to bed in range, you're waking up in range, but then you're having a low throughout the day, me personally, I wouldn't go and try and decrease my Tresiba or my Lantus, because that's going to mess me up overnight. And I prefer to have that low when I'm awake and be able to go and sort that out, if that makes sense. So that's the goal with that. Let's look at Levemir. Now, my personal preference on pens, I sway towards Levemir over Tresiba and Lantus. My personal, and you're on Tresiba or Lantus, excuse me, I think Levemir is much better for this reason. This is the reason why. So we can split Levemir because it's only in 12 to 16 hours, yeah? I will urge you to go, and if you're like, fucking hell, what's on about these different insulins? If you don't understand that, I don't care what you're on. Like, go and research these different insulins. Go and research different insulins, how fast they get into your system, and how long they actually stay in your system. So Levemir, for me personally, is one of the best ones, because what we can do with this is, let's say we are getting dawn phenomenon overnight, so we can give a little bit more because we're splitting the dose with our evening. But then let's say we're getting a few lows throughout the day. Well, we can give a little bit less or we're going to be super active. We can give a little bit less with our morning, because we can split Levemir. We can give a certain amount in the evening and we can give a certain amount in the morning. Whereas some people do split Lantus, some people split Tresiba, but it doesn't have the same quick impact as splitting Levemir would, if that makes sense. So for me personally, if I was going back to pens, which I actually did the other year, I went back onto Levemir because I'm active and it allows me a bit more flexibility. So how are we testing Levemir then? Same overnight, just told you. Same as the pump, same as if you're on Tresiba or if you're on Lantus. Your test is the same. But how are we testing throughout the day then? Okay, so I wouldn't really fast the whole throughout the day if I was testing Levemir. Yeah, if we're testing Levemir. So I would probably just go in, try and test the morning, maybe the afternoon. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say you need to like break it up like you would on a pump. So test fast for the morning, test that, fast for the afternoon, test that, fast for the evening. Because yes, there is flexibility with Levemir, but if you find your morning dose is enough to keep you in range throughout the morning and the afternoon, but then you're having a few lows in the evening, you just have to sort them out with food. Because it'd be pointless in them reducing that Levemir, not being enough for morning and afternoon, but being all right in the evening. Yeah, that rarely happens, but I'm just giving you a real life example. So with Levemir, it's super flexible, but not as flexible as a pump, if that's making sense. Yeah. So I think there's been a lot of information in this. Like I say, you should take notes, go back and play it. But that's the basics of running basal rate tests, why it's important, what basal rate actually does on pens and on a pump. Yeah. If you struggle to understand this, like I say, go and do a bit of research on different sorts of insulins, how they work and stuff. That will be crucial for you to know. And especially if you're taking a long-lasting insulin, but you're not really sure on what it actually does and how long it takes to take effect, honestly, like go and research it. Go and research it because that's going to be gold for you to understand. I'm not going to do recap because there was a lot of information in that. But if you can get your head around what I've just told you, which if you fucking listen to this and watch this and taken some notes, then honestly, you're going to be on your way to really, really solidly improving your glucose control. Like, I can pretty much guarantee that. I'm going to let these outros play for some reason because it likes to try and play over me. Give it a second. Sorry, you guys on the live. Just going to let this play out. And fuck off. Sorted. Right, cool. Back to it. So, yeah, if you can get your head around basal, long-lasting insulin, it's all the same stuff. Like, what it actually does, and especially the one that you're taking, and how to test it, that is going to set you up for really good control. Really, really good control. Because, like I say, that underpins everything. That underpins everything. Now, there is more that we could go into, like, you know, temp basal rates, decreasing if you're having an active day, increasing when you're ill and stuff like that. But I'll probably do another episode on that, to be fair. I'll do another episode because this has been quite long. But what I should have mentioned at the start as well is understanding what your background basal insulin actually does. And it's responsible for the glucose that's kicked out of your liver. Not that you necessarily need to know this, but it does help, yeah? So your liver, us even as type 1s, is pushing out a certain amount of glucose throughout the day, and our basal insulin needs to be enough to deal with that. Then when we get ill or we get stressed or a super hard workout, our liver can push out more glucose. So what happens? Our basal insulin needs to go up. If you can get your head around this, and like I say, do what I've just said about about doing tests and how to test it, honestly, that will start to really, really improve your control. I've seen it time and time again. Yeah, time and time again. So I am going to leave it there, team. If you do, like I say, I've given you examples of me, how I test it, how I tested on pens, when I was on injections, basal rate. Yeah. If you do have any questions on this, feel free to reach out, drop me a message. Yeah. Not an issue in answering that at all. Right, team. That has been super informative. Like I say, you should have been taking notes. You can always go back and listen to this, but I will repeat it again. If you can get your head around basal background, you're going to be on your way to fucking really, really good control, a great average, great stable overnight levels that we all want, because that comes down to background insulin at the end of the day. Yeah, you'll be well on your way to that. So, gang, that is it. If you got value from this episode, please leave me a rating and a review in the podcast app, as it really does help me reach more type 1 diabetics. And I will say thank you very much. I know there was a lot of information in that, but like I say, take it in dribs and drabs, take notes, keep listening to it over and over, take the bits that apply to you and go and actually fucking take action on it. Because if you're not taking action, you ain't fucking going to get anywhere at the end of the day. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you're not applying that knowledge, it doesn't matter. It's still like you just don't know it. Right, bit of tough love there at the end, team. Until the next episode, peace. Right, gang, I'm going to stay on for a minute and just see if we have any questions. Nothing on Facebook, nothing on YouTube. If anyone has any questions on Instagram, a few emojis. Thank you, team. Owen the King, we say shitty blocks. I don't know where I get my analogies and what I try going on about some. These words just come to my head. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like my math skills. Hey, math team, definitely. Sweet. Got any questions there? No. Cool. Right, gang, I'm going to jump off. Thank you very much for watching this. I appreciate you all. And until the next live, have a great day, evening, morning, night, wherever you are in the world. Peace.